most businesses will at some point have had a premium buyer that was very quick to buy, was very easily converted to a customer, is always very happy with the service, has never really mentioned price. They just have kind of been some of those dream clients where you think, if every customer was like that, I would be very, very happy. They tend to be the ones where you can focus in on them first and try and understand them a little bit better to really dig into what motivates them, what triggered their buying decision, and that tends to be quite a good starting point. Most businesses do and have worked with premium buyers. They may just not have been aware of it.
Welcome to the Ecommerce Marketing Podcast, the highly rated digital marketing podcast that provides weekly digital marketing tips and strategies from some of the world's top digital marketers and e-commerce entrepreneurs that will help you take your digital marketing to the next level. Sit back and enjoy this power-packed episode hosted by Arlen Robinson, who is an e-commerce entrepreneur and digital marketing expert with over 20 years of experience. Hey, e-commerce marketing podcast listener. Are you looking to increase traffic and sales to your website? You can do this by launching your own affiliate program. Just visit getosi.com and sign up for a free trial today. That's getosi.com. Now get ready to hear from your e-commerce marketing expert of the week as they drill down to give you details on marketing strategies that can help grow your business.
Welcome back to the E-commerce Marketing Podcast, everyone. My name is Arlen and I am your host. And today we have a very special guest, Cara Armstrong, who's a dynamic visionary leader behind Jarvie & Co. and She Dreamed, She Did. With over a decade of corporate experience, Cara drives success and empowers women entrepreneurs. Jarvie & Co. specializes in med tech and B2B, streamlining sales through Cara's holistic approach. She Dreamed, She Did aims to empower women to scale businesses and achieve financial freedom, focusing on the same 7 fundamental elements. This initiative encourages high-ticket strategies, pricing elevation, and embracing expertise for newfound freedom. Welcome to the podcast, Cara.
Thank you. It's so nice to be on, Arlen. Thank you for the lovely introduction.
Yes, you're welcome. And I'm so excited to talk to you. Really, I'm going to be diving deep into an area that you're pretty much all in every day. B2B sales strategies, helping businesses that are on the e-commerce side to create premium products and services so that they can really, of course, increase their revenues, of course, as well as their, average order value as well. With
Sure.
Premium products, that's of course, a quicker way to be able to do that. But before we do dive deep into all of that, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your background and specifically how you got into what you're doing today?
Yeah, no, that's great. So, there's a very long story to this, but I will keep it as short as possible. But I have, I have a decade of experience within the B2B world, and I entered the industry within a sales position. And, I absolutely loved the interaction with the customers face to face. And it was something that I did for a number of years. But I guess when you're, at the forefront of sales, you experience the highs and you also experience the lows. So obviously when the sales are flowing, working in sales is a really great position to be in. And then perhaps when the sales aren't flowing so much, it's not such a great position to be in. And I had the opportunity to do an MBA to, really further my business acumen. And part of my MBA actually was centered around, the strategies that are needed in order to create premium businesses and premium brands. And it became quite apparent that, when you are just working on the front line of sales, you actually have very little input into how you actually really sell the product. You're really told exactly what to say, the product's already done for you, and you just kind of have to execute. And what I was really able to learn on my MBA is there is so much more that goes into being able to execute a really successful premium product. And, I really had the opportunity to deep dive into the strategies behind how you position a brand and a product to really enter into that premium space. And, coming out of my MBA, I was able to hold a global sales role for, a multi-million pound medtech company. And I did that for nearly 5 years. I learned some incredible experience working with, businesses that were 7, 8, 9 figures and helping them get there. And, the experience was absolutely invaluable. But what I felt was missing was to be able to help, slightly smaller businesses be able to enter that premium market. And, I took the time to really, speak to some friends, some family, and, some ideal customers. And it really became apparent to me that, they had these fantastic products, these products that created these insane results. And they really should have been charging so much more than they were for their product or service. And it really struck me that there was, a missing piece for them in order to take their business into that premium space. So I took the scary decision at the end of last year to start my own business. And here we are today, where I really focus on, helping B2B businesses and particularly founder-led businesses to really elevate their brand to the next level and to enter that premium space.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And, congrats on jumping into, your entrepreneurial journey.
Yes, thank you.
It's always exciting when you're launching something new, and it's a little bit scary all at the same time.
Yeah.
And I'm always curious, especially for founders that, were working in the corporate world for, companies, larger companies for a while, and then they dive in on their own. What, as far as, plan B, because we all know that jumping into your own business, it's a risk, and
Yeah.
it's a risk that we all take when we do it. If this didn't work out for you, what were you going to do?
Well, this is where my stubbornness comes in.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I have to admit there wasn't a plan B.
Okay.
It was something that I had thought about on and off for years and years and years. And it was kind of that niggle that wouldn't ever go away. And I think when you're in the corporate world, things are quite clearly mapped out for you. You have a succession plan, you very clearly know where you're going. And, I'm incredibly grateful for those experiences and the knowledge and, expertise I learned. However, there was this niggle that I really wanted to go it alone and, kind of forge my own path. So I think, in all honesty, the stubbornness in me didn't really allow me to have a plan
Right.
B. It was kind of, when you make this decision to go all in, you go all in.
Sure.
And there were probably multiple times previously where I could have done it and I didn't. And it was just a question of when it felt, the right time to really go all in. And to really just put those blinkers on. Now, obviously, I had planned for this, financially. I, wasn't doing anything that was going to be, so risky that, wouldn't be able to put food on the table. There was a plan in that sense, but there wasn't a plan in terms of, what would my next job be if this didn't work out. So yeah, I guess,
Gotcha.
I financially had planned for the first, year of business and the momentum that's required to get it going. But in terms of, wanting to have a plan B of where I might, my next role might be, no, I didn't really allow
Okay.
myself to go there.
Gotcha. And I totally understand that. I think when I started my business, it's the same thing. You always know based on your education, based on the past experiences that you had, you kind of always know in the back of your mind, okay, yeah, worst comes to worst.
Yeah.
I'm not going to starve. I'm going to,
Yeah.
I'm going to be able to get a job
Yeah.
somehow based on my experience and, my resume. So you
Yeah.
kind of already know that, but then you know that you have that goal and there's no in your mind there's no option. You want to make this thing work no
Yeah,
matter
and
what. So
it's a
that's
bold
okay.
choice, and I think it takes a lot to make that bold choice. So
Yes.
when you finally get yourself to that point, you kind of have to say, we're going all in on this.
Yes, exactly. You
Otherwise you're
have to do
probably
that.
not going to be as successful as you want to if you're already planning on, a fallback before you've even really given it a good
Yes.
shot.
Yes, very, very true. Now, as far as today's conversation, as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about building B2B sales strategies, um, and specifically, how does a B2B company that's selling products to a certain particular market, how do they know they're ready to create some premium products? Is
Hmm.
there like, you know, some type of signaling? Are there certain metrics that you're looking for? How do they
Yeah.
know that, all right, they can really do this?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple of things that kind of tend to rear their head when businesses feel like they're ready to transition into that premium space. And I think more often than not, especially in B2B, because quite often they're quite complex sales cycles, there's an awful lot that goes into securing
Yes.
B2B deals, that there becomes a feeling in the business that they are over delivering versus the price that they are, providing. And
Hmm.
that often doesn't happen overnight. It will kind of start to build momentum where you're seeing, the fantastic results that you get your customers or your clients, and you're realizing, you're hearing noise within, your competitive space, that you're massively over delivering on
Right.
what you are providing versus the price. And more often than not, your customers will be telling you all the time, gosh, you're such good value. I can't believe how, valuable this is for the
Mhm.
price that I've
Yes.
paid. And these things, this narrative starts to build where you kind of become a bit more aware of, okay, what I'm providing to my customers here, is massively over delivering versus the price that, I'm really
Yes.
charging. And that's a really great place to be in.
Okay.
Sometimes businesses are on the flip side where they're charging too much and they're having constant price objections, and customers aren't wanting to buy, and that would be a business that was not ready or needed significant help in order to
Mhm.
transition into that premium space. But if you're
Right.
you're lucky enough to be in the first pool of businesses where you're very conscious that you're over delivering, then that tends to be a really positive signal that you're
Mhm.
ready to transition and up level into a more premium segment of your market.
Yes, that makes sense. There's two also ways to look at it, because I see what you're saying. You can get to the point where you realize that, yeah, you're over delivering. You may be hearing this from your customers. It's like this, they're like, okay, this is such a great value. I can't believe I'm getting all of this for
Yeah.
what's being charged. But then from the customer's perspective, I guess the tricky thing then becomes, if you're creating these premium offerings, products or services, and you're already servicing some existing customers that you're maybe over delivering, they're getting like a huge deal. What's the rule of thumb as far as pricing is concerned, and grandfathering existing customers into a certain model that you have, versus just saying, that's it, we've made a hard decision, we can no
Yeah.
longer support this particular structure based on whatever it is, we're going to have to move you guys up to this premium tier?
Yeah.
It's a fine line, because of
It's
course nobody wants to pay more out of the blue,
yeah.
especially these days. What's your advice on that?
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic question. And this is something that businesses, really do struggle with when they're trying to make that decision. And this tends to be the most difficult part of deciding that you're going to, enter into that premium segment. And not all the time, but quite often, it's actually a different type of buyer that you will now be speaking to. So
Okay.
to take your existing customer base and then expect them to pay twice as much can be a very difficult transition and not always a positive one. So this is something that businesses really need to, very carefully navigate. And I wouldn't advocate for them to just double their prices with their existing customers, because there's going to be such a shock factor there. And they're going to be used to, the overvalue that you were providing for the price. Okay. So I would recommend in that situation that this is a gradual build a price with your existing customers. So you're just going to start doing small, price increases every 6 months to really just slowly build them up. But the reality is you probably will not ever get them to that complete premium price that you maybe really do desire. And if you are wanting, and most businesses do, to protect that reoccurring revenue that they've worked so hard to achieve, then this is the strategy I would recommend with your existing customers. Now, when you're wanting to move into that more premium segment, more often than not, you actually need to start speaking to a different ideal customer. So this tends to be quite a transitional time for businesses where they may have, their existing ideal customer, but they now might have a new ideal customer who they really focus their, new marketing and sales efforts on. And this can be a time, where you can feel a little bit torn, and it really is a transitional, time for a business when they make that decision. But what I really try and guide my clients on is that it's only really a temporary, feeling of kind of, where are we doing the right thing by making this decision? Because when you start, really understanding the ideal customer of a premium buyer, and you really start tailoring your marketing and your sales to that individual who is looking to spend more, is looking for a certain experience, a certain unique solution. And once you're really able to dial that down, you're able to actually call them in quite quickly, far quicker than most of my clients actually expect. So I think it actually, before you take the leap, it feels harder than it actually is in reality. But it's definitely a fine balance that you've got to manage, because, your customers have been your customers more often than not for a long time, and you want to nurture them. But that, that requires a softly approach, whereas I would also recommend to have a strategy where, any new customers going forward are directly speaking to that more premium buyer.
Yes, I understand. You mentioned a couple of key things at the same time. One of the things that you mentioned is that not only, of course, are you going to, maybe gradually get your existing customers up, maybe not to the highest premium level that you want, but, you're gradually going to, of course, get more revenue from them that's going to be a little bit more sustainable for your business. But at the same time, it seems like creating a premium tier, you also really are going to have to almost create a whole nother customer persona or avatar for your sales and marketing teams to try to target, because it seems like they're not existing at that point. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. And what I try and help my clients with, because this sometimes can feel like an overwhelming part of the process, where they say, how am I meant to know who this premium buyer is? How am I meant to understand them in order to really be able to target them effectively in my marketing and sales? And what I really try and help them with is, most businesses will at some point have had a premium buyer. So they will have been a buyer that, was very quick to buy, was very easily, converted to a customer, is always very happy with the service, has never really mentioned price. They just have kind of been, some of those dream clients where you think, or customers where you think, if every customer was like that, I would be very, very happy. And they tend to be the ones where you can focus in on them first and try and understand them a little bit better to really dig into what motivates them, what triggered their buying decision. And that tends to be quite a good starting point. Most businesses do and have worked with premium buyers. They may just not have been aware of it. And then in the instance where they haven't worked with premium buyers or there's limited kind of data for them to fall back on, more often than not, premium buyers are looking for micro specificity. They're looking for really specific solutions to really high value problems or desires. So if you're able to provide a solution for something that really creates a unique experience for them and really uniquely answers a critical unmet need or a critical desire that they have, then you're really able to tap into more of that premium level buyer. So, they're not looking for a general experience. For example, they're not looking for a business to come in and increase their revenue. They're looking for a business to come in and increase their revenue and, improve the quality of some of their systems and to, streamline their sales processes. They're really looking for tailored, very specific solutions to the problems that they're experiencing. So if you're able to look at your product that you have today and really dial in on how you can make that hyper specific to your ideal customer, then more often than not, you're actually then able to tap into a premium buyer.
Okay. That's awesome. Now, as far as, a brand is concerned, they may be listening to this and they're saying, okay, sounds great. Could you point out a particular case study, either a business you're involved with or just in general that has gone this path, and what was the kind of the success that they saw? What was like the before and the after, and what was the measurable result of creating this higher tier?
Yeah, so there's a couple. So I think, there's one that comes to mind. I was working with a client who was in a very saturated market. And, there was consistently new entrants that were coming into this market. There was a relatively low barrier to entry. So they felt like there was constantly, new competitors coming in. And they had previously held, significant market share. And, sales had been growing, nearly 20% year on year. They really were, creating momentum within the market. And then there was a market shift where it became a lot more saturated and there were a lot more, entrants coming in. And it became a very noisy, busy industry to be in. And even though they knew that they were, offering something that really created fantastic results for their customers, they felt like that had kind of been lost. More often than not, they were in conversations with, potential customers that they wanted to work with, where price really became a core issue and something that was really preventing them from getting, their customer over the line. And that was really because the market had become so saturated that it became really like a price play. And, I think quite often, not all industries, but when it becomes a price play, it's who can go lower, who can go lower, who can go lower. And it's a race to the bottom when you start to play that game. So, they kind of came to me and said, look, we know we offer something better than our competitors, but we're really struggling to get that across, and we just feel like we are constantly playing the price game. We feel pressured to play the price game. We feel like we have to discount. We feel like we have to make these special offers just to try and stand out in this saturated market. And then even when they were doing all of these things, they were then still having price objections from their potential customers. So they kind of just felt like they didn't really know what to do in this situation. So, we really worked together intensively to really look at their business model. And quite often I find with my clients is, yes, there are multiple things that need tweaking, but that's all it is. It's tweaking. More often than not, it's not a full, business model overhaul, which I think quite a lot of, people might perceive it to be. It just requires, the insight to know that there are certain elements you need within your business from a sales and marketing point of view to really position yourself as a premium player. And, they were really at the point where they didn't want to play the price game anymore. They kind of wanted to regain their market share. And, it was a critical time in their business. And what we really did is look at how can we position them as a premium option in their market? What can we do to kind of cut the noise out and no longer compete with their competitors and really just stand alone on their own? And that really started, and we were just talking about ideal customer, but it really is a foundational element when it comes to how you position your product for a premium product or service. Is more often than not we spend too much time looking at what our competitors are doing and feel like we have to either match what they're doing or do better than what they're doing. But more often than not, what I really have found, over the last decade of doing this is it's actually your customer that you need to focus on. And there are so many instances, and, I'm aware I'm from the UK, so you might not, know the businesses that I'm talking about, but there's been lots of businesses in the UK that have been, really strong market leaders and then nearly overnight have closed down because a new business has come in and taken their customer base. And that's because if you're not constantly looking at your ideal customers' unmet needs and looking at what your competitors' customers have as an unmet need and really try and fulfill what that unmet need is, then you're not going to be able to differentiate yourself. And when you're able to tap into your customer base, that is when you're able to transition to become a premium, player in your market, because you're not benchmarking yourself against, all these competitors in a saturated market. You actually start to stand alone and really understand who your ideal customer is and really meet their unmet need. So when I was able to do this with the business I was working with, we really looked at their ideal customer, we looked at what the unmet need was, and then we really looked at how we can implement, messaging and sales psychology and brand positioning to really differentiate themselves and just speak directly to their premium buyer and kind of cut everybody else out of the noise. And, this isn't something that happens overnight, but it's something that can have quite, massive impact when it's done correctly. And, they're now on a really strong growth trajectory. They're now very clearly different to everybody in their market. And a premium buyer wants something different. They're not interested in purchasing from, the sea of sameness. They don't want 100 options of the same thing. They want one option that really, solves an unmet critical need or a really strong desire that they have. And all they're doing is looking to find that business that uniquely solves, their problem. So if you're able to do that, you're actually quite quickly able to enter that premium market and really stand alone and stand out, for the premium buyer that is looking for unique value and doesn't want to have a look at, the 100 other options. They're just looking for that one right option.
Yes. Okay. Very, very well said. It sounds like, of course, there's a lot to consider when you're going about doing this. There's a lot of metrics. There's a lot of planning that has to go into play when you're thinking about going this route.
Yeah.
From the outside, of course, it looks like it. In many cases, it seems like it makes sense. And you also mentioned that a lot of times, speaking from those brands that you're familiar with in the UK, a lot of them were focus so much on their competitors in the space and then trying to keep up with exactly what their competitors were doing and not necessarily looking at the customers. And it's a tough thing. Just as myself as a business owner, we're always kind of focusing on, all right, what are our competitors doing? We're trying to keep up with them. And to an extent, you do have to
Of
do that.
course, yeah.
But at the same time, you can't forget about your bread and butter, those customers that you're really servicing. And
Yeah,
maybe your
absolutely.
customers don't want, feature X that the other competitor has. Maybe your customers are a little bit different. So I
100%.
really see
Yeah,
what you're saying when it comes
absolutely.
to
And
that.
I think, on that point, that's a really good point to raise is, premium buyers are also really looking for a transformation. And quite often their buying decisions are more based on emotional buying decisions because they are really wanting a transformation or a solution to a problem or desire that they have, and they're not so interested in all of the features and the benefits. And I think sometimes businesses can get caught in the trap where they're like, if we just offer more features and we just offer more benefits than our competitor, then we can charge more and we will tap into that premium market. And that's not always the case. Sometimes premium buyers would be happy with less features and benefits if it,
Mhm.
created the transformation that they were really looking for. So yeah, I
Right.
think understanding your customer, again, it's, I talk about it all the time, but it's just
Mhm.
so fundamental because it links into everything else when it comes to a strategic transition into becoming a premium business.
Yeah, for sure. Now, as we get ready to wrap things up, from the companies that you've worked with, or just the companies that you're familiar with in general that have gone down this route of going from, a set product offering to premium, what's one of the biggest mistakes that you've seen businesses make that have gone this route and failed? That you would say, okay, if they just didn't do this, they may have had some success. What would you say that one biggest
Um,
mistake is?
I think definitely their ideal customer is something that is quite often missed. But I think also, there's this misconception that when you need to transition into, becoming a premium business, that so much of kind of the exterior of your business matters. And yes, perception goes a long way. So, you don't want your customers to come onto your website or speak to your sales reps and have a negative experience. Absolutely not.
Right, for
But I
sure.
think sometimes too much focus is actually spent on almost like the brand's identity, the visuals, and they spend, so much investment on that side of things. But what is actually lacking is, more of the strategic positioning, the uniqueness that they're going to bring to the market. What does their brand really stand for, and how does that resonate with their ideal customer? So, how can you look at your brand from a customer-centric point of view? How can you create a brand around your customers instead of a brand around what you think your customers want? And I think that would probably be my biggest feedback. When you're looking
Okay.
at creating a premium brand, I look at it like an iceberg. The tip of, above the water is kind of your visual identity, and then the iceberg under the water is around, how you have a unique selling point, the positioning, the substance of your brand, your messaging, the psychology behind your brand. And this takes up so much more of your brand, but is quite often overlooked because it's not so
Yes.
fun.
Mhm.
Everybody wants to create, a really premium looking brand, but actually more
Right.
often than not, yes, the premium buyer needs that as part of their buying decision, but they
Yes.
also need all the other things that I just mentioned in order to make a buying decision. And I think quite often that's missed. And maybe that's where businesses kind of struggle, where they've raised their prices, they've kind of had a rebrand, and then they're struggling as to why they're not converting that, more
Mhm.
premium buyer.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely see that. I've seen many cases here in the U.S. where that's happened, and yeah, it definitely makes sense. Well,
Good.
Cara, this has been an awesome conversation. We definitely have loved to have appreciate you coming on and sharing
Thank you.
your knowledge with our listeners and viewers. I know I've learned a lot, and I know they have as well. But I always like to shift gears here before we let you go, just so our audience can get to know you a little bit better. If you don't mind sharing one closing fun fact about yourself that you think we'd be interested to know.
Oh gosh, I'm just trying to think. A mother of 2 toddlers doesn't have many fun facts at the moment.
Oh, no. I'm sure
No, I
plenty.
do have one actually. I
Okay.
used to be a national swimmer. I'm going to just use
Okay.
that one off the top of my head.
Okay.
You know, I'm very sporty, very active, but I would say that's probably my claim to fame, that I once swam for my country.
Okay, awesome. So were you in one of the Olympics?
No, I wasn't in the Olympics, unfortunately.
Okay.
That wasn't quite, you know, the pipeline dream. No, I was quite a lot younger. I was still in school when I did that. But yeah, gosh, the Olympics would have been amazing. But you know,
Okay.
we are where we are. Instead, I help, you know, create premium businesses.
Okay. Awesome. A national swimmer. Well, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. And finally, before we do let you go, if our listeners and viewers want to reach out to you and pick your brain anymore about these B2B sales strategies and going from regular offerings to premium offerings, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Yeah, sure. So there's 2 places. If you go to jarvieandco.com, then that's my website where you can kind of, you know, get to know a little bit more about my brand and the services that I offer. And then I'm also quite active on LinkedIn. So I post regular videos. I have a newsletter that, you know, goes out. I have a couple of really amazing masterclasses for free that are a really good starting place, you know, for businesses to kind of build their knowledge if they're thinking about wanting to enter into that premium space. And, you know, is also a really great place to connect with me, you know, if you have any questions on the back of this podcast.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. We'll be sure to have the links to your social handles in the show notes so people can reach out to you. And once again, thank you again, Cara, for joining us today on the E-commerce Marketing Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to the E-commerce Marketing Podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and share it with everyone you know. Are you looking to take your digital marketing to the next level but are tired of weeding through countless YouTube videos with unproven and untrusted marketing strategies? Well, we have the answer for you. The More Sales Every Month online digital marketing course. In this information-packed course, you will learn effective keyword research, link building, content marketing, and much more to attract and convert your site visitors into paying customers. Just go to moresaleseverymonth.com and sign up today for a low one-time fee. In addition to this power-packed course, if you would like to get access to a growing repository of digital marketing articles, PDFs, and ebooks, check out getosi.com/resources and opt in to get full access to our library of priceless marketing information to help you take your digital marketing to the next level.